Hi, everybody. This is Karen Schaal, Gratitude Gal, coming to you from Key West, Florida. Today, we're talking about something we all wrestle with, how to go from knowing what to do to actually doing it. We live in a time of information overload. Whatever you want to learn, it's only a few clicks away. We read the books, we listen to the podcasts, attend the workshops, and say, hey, that sounds great. I'll start on Monday. And then Monday comes, and we don't do it. At some point, you have to stop gathering information and start using it. We already know what to do. We just haven't done it. If you've been reading, studying, showing up and listening, that's fine. But knowledge without application really doesn't change anything. You owe it to yourself to see what happens when you finally follow through. You owe it to the people who count on you to bring what you've learned into real life. This isn't about guilt. It's not about pressure. It's about honesty. If we say we want change, we need to do it, not with words, but with action. The truth is, the world doesn't reward us as much for what we know as it responds to what we do. So let's talk about how to finally close that gap from knowing to doing. This is the Karen Schaal Podcast. I'm Karen Schaal. Let's get started. You know, this gap between knowing and doing isn't new. Even back in ancient Greece, Aristotle talked about akrasia, that moment when you know what's right, but don't actually do it. He called it weakness of will. A few thousand years later, Benjamin Franklin tried to solve it too. He made a list of 13 personal virtues. Things like patience, order, and moderation, and tracked them every day in his notebook. But even Franklin admitted he could not live up to all of them at once. On a personal note, as a young girl, I remember finding a book by Alan Lakin, and he was one of the first big names in time management. I read it cover to cover, highlighted everything, took notes. I really knew the material. But somehow I couldn't make the suggestions work. When I look back at this, I realize most of us don't struggle because we don't care or because we don't know. You know, that's pretty obvious. We care and we know, but we struggle because knowing something and living it are two different skills. They even happen in different parts of the brain. Knowledge lights up the thinking centers, but action needs energy, focus, rhythm, and a calm nervous system to effectively move forward. And when we're not grounded, when we're tired, dehydrated, distracted, even simple things start to feel hard. We overthink, lose momentum, and the cycle repeats itself. That's why I believe the big 5 fundamentals are so essential. Intentional breathing, hydration, sleep, journaling, and time in nature. They're not just wellness habits, they're stabilizers, helping you to regulate your biology so your mind can follow through. When those are in place, clarity returns, energy rises, and doing stops feeling like such a battle. That's when knowledge starts to become real change. But here's what makes this even more powerful. When you start to understand the science behind what's happening, it stops being guesswork. You begin working with your biology instead of against it. You don't need science to appreciate a walk on the beach or a deep breath of fresh air. You can feel those benefits right away. But when you're serious about real, lasting, positive change, science becomes a shortcut. It helps you understand how your brain and body work together. And through this understanding, your good intentions can turn into consistent action. A lot of people think personal growth is all about motivation or willpower. But the truth is, motivation gets you started, but it's your biology that keeps you going. Think of it like a gardener. A gardener doesn't force the seed to grow. They create the right conditions, the light, the water, the soil. Your biology works the same way. Once you understand how it works, you can create the right internal environment for change. When you first learn something new, your thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, is doing the heavy lifting. That's where you plan. That's where you reason and make decisions. That's where your intentions live. Oh, I should go to bed earlier. I'll start walking after dinner from now on. But that part of the brain tires quickly. It uses a ton of energy. That's why you know what to do, but still don't follow through. That's when your habit brain steps in. That's the part that stores patterns and routines, the things you do automatically. As you repeat a behavior, control shifts from your thinking brain to your habit brain. That's when action becomes natural, what scientists call automaticity. This is a point when things begin to happen automatically. Your body and mind have been informed, and they take over. Neuroscientist Anne Graybiel found that once a habit forms, your brain fires at the start and end of the action, not the whole way through. Your brain has learned the rhythm. It knows what to do. Researchers like Peter Gallwitzer discovered that making a simple if-then plan links thought to action. Like, for example, if it's 9:30, then I'll dim the lights. That cue connects intention to behavior. And Wendy Wood found that almost half of what we do each day anyway happens automatically, triggered by our environment rather than by our motivation. So if you thought you were lazy, you're not. Your brain just loves efficiency. Once it learns a pattern, it keeps you on autopilot. If you want new results, you have to teach it new patterns. Let's take a simple example. Going to bed earlier. You already know it's good for you. You said, I really need to get sleep. But at 9:30 p.m., the show's still on, your phone's glowing, and your brain says, just one more. That's your thinking brain arguing with your habit brain. Every night you stay up scrolling, you're teaching your brain, hey, this is what we do at night. Now, make an if-then plan. If it's 9:30, then I'll dim the lights. At first, it takes effort, sometimes a ton of effort. But repeat it for a few nights and your brain starts linking that cue to calm. Soon it happens naturally. You've taught your biology a new rhythm. And this is where the big 5 fundamentals, which we covered in our backpack series, come in. And again, intentional breathing, hydration, sleep, journaling, and time in nature. They aren't just wellness habits. They're biological stabilizers. They keep your nervous system balanced so you can follow through. When you pause to breathe, your body learns to feel safe. When you hydrate before work, you build focus. When you step outside, even for 5 minutes, your chemistry resets. When you write one sentence about your day, you train reflection. And when you dim those lights at night, your body learns the cue for rest. Every time you connect a cue to an action, you're teaching your brain what doing feels like. And once your biology learns it, it carries you forward. Isn't that pretty cool? Repetition builds structure. Emotion builds speed. Together, they lock in learning. That's the bridge from knowing to doing. And all of this, the science, the patterns, the habits, it's not just theory. It shows up in real life. Some days everything flows easily. Other days, it feels like you're pushing through mud. That's where this work gets tested in the rhythm of our everyday lives. We all have both kinds of days, the rushed and reactive ones and the ones that flow. Sometimes they even happen in the same 4 hours, right? The difference isn't luck, it's awareness. It's how tuned in you are to your own biology and natural patterns, and the small choices you make over and over again. Of course, real life isn't this tidy. You don't just wake up one morning and live in perfect clarity. This isn't about fixing everything at once. It's about small, honest choices throughout the day. Some will come easily. Others will take practice, a lot of practice in some cases, and that's okay, because that's how real change happens. We all know what it feels like to know you need to do something, and we end up turning on the TV or scrolling for just a minute, and that minute turns into an hour. We've all been there. This is hardcore mental work, and most people would rather ignore it. But this is where real transformation happens. And the moment you decide to stop running on autopilot and start choosing stability, focus, and goodness. So let's walk through a day together. It's not always about getting it right, that's for sure. It's about staying with it, continuing, persevering, and choosing again. Here's a morning. This is a morning where the alarm blares, you hit snooze, you're reaching for coffee before your eyes even open, and the day already feels like a chase. And then there's another kind of morning, the one that starts with an intentional breath. You sit up, you take a slow sip of water, you walk to the nearest window or step outside, and let the light touch your eyes. That's all it takes to tell your brain morning has begun. Your body quietly says we're awake, we're ready. It doesn't need to be a perfect sunrise or a walk on the beach. Any daylight works. Even cloudy light resets your circadian rhythm. Cortisol levels balance, your energy rises naturally, and focus starts to return. That's biology doing its job. This is what trust the process really means. You might not see instant results. You won't, but your mind and body are already responding. And that's how you begin building a stable foundation. Later in the day, things speed up. You're multitasking, your shoulders tighten, mind scattered. The noise in your head is louder than the work in front of you. And then there's a moment you remember to breathe. You remember to pause. Just one slow minute. You breathe 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Your shoulders drop, your mind clears. You didn't meditate. You simply gave your nervous system a cue. Relax and reset. Slow breathing activates the vagus nerve, lowering cortisol and sharpening focus. If it's 9 a.m., then breathe. That's your new cue. And when you take this small moment, you set yourself up to continue with greater clarity and focus. By the time you get to lunchtime, you have more choices. You could rush through lunch or skip it entirely. You could reach for caffeine and by 2 o'clock feel tired, wired, and distracted. Or you could take a short walk outside, breathe in the air, hydrate, jot down one grateful thought in your journal. Your body starts to match your breath, calm and steady. It might even feel small or even pointless at first, but it's not. 10 minutes of natural light helps recalibrate your circadian rhythm. Fresh air lowers stress, and gratitude shifts your brain attention towards what's working. These small, quiet acts are the scaffolding of real change. If it's lunchtime, step outside. Evening arrives. Work's done, but your mind keeps going. You scroll to unwind, turn on the TV, but the noise only gets louder. Or you can choose differently. Step outside. Feel the cooler air. Have some fresh water. Write 3 short lines. One challenge, one surprise, one thing you're proud of. Your brain begins to release the day rather than replay it. Journaling activates the prefrontal cortex, helping your brain to organize emotion into meaning. And gratitude at night closes the loop on awareness. It tells your brain we're done for today. That's your cue for rest. If it's 9:30, dim the lights. You lie in bed, you could scroll again, that's easy. Or you could breathe deeply, once, twice slowly. Your body recognizes the rhythm of rest. You fall asleep more easily and wake clear. It's not magic, it's biology. Deep sleep activates the lymphatic system, your brain's natural cleaning mechanism. Overnight, it cleans toxins and restores balance. So you can think clearly again. When I first learned about this, I was blown away that I actually have a system that is flushing out the toxins in my brain so I can wake up refreshed. I mean, if this was in pill form, we would all be buying this, right? But it's built in. It happens automatically if we're getting proper sleep. And another bonus, evidence is showing that the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's is lowered when we get sufficient rest. If it's bedtime, dim the lights and do some intentional breathing. This will slowly teach your body it's time to rest. Both versions of this day use the same body, the same 24 hours. The difference isn't willpower, it's awareness. Put into action. It's the small moments of choosing biology over busyness. From knowing to doing isn't about always getting it right. It's about staying with it, continuing, persevering, and choosing again. Every breath, every sip of water, every step into nature, every line on a page, that's doing, helping your body to remember its own rhythm. And all of this, I really consider it a noble calling. Every time you make one of these small choices, you're honoring the brilliance within you. You're saying, I'm going to recognize the strength I already have. I'm going to cultivate it. You're feeding the majesty of your own design. This remarkable system of mind and body that was built for growth, balance, and joy. So be patient, be consistent, and most of all, be grateful. Gratitude will steady the heart while the mind catches up. It softens the edges when change takes time. It keeps you grounded when things don't go perfectly. Science gives us a roadmap. Gratitude gives us a grace to stay on it. So as you move through the week, don't chase more. Keep going back to your foundation, your biology and your awareness. Trust it. Work with it. Your mind and body know the way. So as you move through the next few days, notice the small moments when you begin to put some of these recommendations into practice. You are taking the knowing and turning it quietly into doing. These are your foundations: intentional breathing, hydration, sleep, journaling, and time in nature. They may seem simple, but they're the ground everything else stands on. Once these rhythms are in place, you'll have the energy, clarity, and stability to take on bigger goals, the more demanding changes that come next. Because without a foundation, even the best intentions fall apart. But when your biology is balanced, you can build anything on top of it. New habits, new growth, real change. So start small. Pick one thing from today's episode: water before coffee, a deep breath before you sit down at your computer, or make that phone call, or 5 minutes of writing before bed. Try it for a few days and see how it feels. Not just in what you do, but in how you feel doing it. When you align with your biology, you stop forcing change and start living it. And please, if you're finding these podcasts helpful, like and subscribe. And if you know someone who's always trying to get things done, but often ends up frustrated or stuck, send this episode their way. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Karen Schaal Podcast. I'm Karen Schaal. See you next time. Bye-bye.